and welcome to another Ammach Project Archives episode. We're still with the interview series, and today you will meet Tony Topping from the north of England. Tony's extraordinary experiences have taken him down all kinds of rabbit holes, from what we might call TI, targeted individual attacks, where he thinks that those governors of information that should or shouldn't be released in the public domain operate in trying to silence people. And then all of these other experiences that involve him filming objects and craft above his house and nearby locations. So there's a lot of information and a lot of research that Tony has done, which I think you will find absolutely fascinating. An interesting conundrum in which we find ourselves. We haven't got all the answers by a long way, but he throws up a lot of very, very interesting possibilities. And then we end with, wouldn't it be amazing if we could raise the consciousness of humanity en masse, all in one go? That would soon loosen the grips, wouldn't it? Enjoy.
And welcome to Ammach, another of our interviews. Introduce you to Tony Topping, and we're going to hear some very extraordinary things. Hello. Welcome to Ammach.
Hello. You remind me of one of those big BBC news, something like Bolton and Co. or something like that. Yeah.
Tony, you've got so much that you've gone through. It's very difficult to find somewhere to start. So perhaps we could just do the thing of starting at the beginning.
I mean, you know, at the age of 2, I had my first paranormal experience, and it was like seeing something walk through a wall. Now, I specifically remember what that was. I don't talk about it, but I know what it was. And now, in all the years ahead, I do realise that it was something not human, making its presence felt even at that age with me. So it didn't have a malevolence to it either. It was just something that happened. It's all about signal, and it's all about signals in time, and it's all about the effect of those signals on ourselves as people. It is indeed the seeding of the consciousness, and very crucial to get that point. I saw this thing walk through a wall. I can see myself now. I remember crying at my father, and my father going, "Oh, there's nothing there, don't be silly." I can see him now putting me in my cot. It wasn't such fright, but I remember the situation there where I'm trying to tell my dad what I've seen, and my father's putting me in the cot and he's saying that there's nothing there. I can see it now. And I also bit my tongue as well. If we came from a poor family, we were living in Victorian conditions. We didn't have a bathroom, we didn't have heating in the house. We were struggling. My father was a baker, very poor. As a result of that, I got severely bullied at school. Called everything from a gypsy to the N-word, spat at, bullied. It's just been, my childhood was horrendous. So at 2 years of age, I saw that stuff walking through a wall. It was the constant strange dreams. Yes. They started from about 4 years of age. They were all about everything that has happened to me started in 1970, and I've been tracked since then because it's all about signal in time.
Right.
Can't remember anything apart from the fact that I was awoken by strange nightmares and all that constantly as a child. And this, of course, and I would also be seeing people looking at me when I used to close my eyes or awake at night. I'd look up at the ceiling and there'd be what I would describe as people. That's all you can describe. It was just such an odd scenario. You know, a friend of my father's said, "Oh, well, you must be psychic." I mean, my father was potently psychic. He used to give me headaches if I was naughty. He was 8, 9 years of age. If I was naughty, he would project, and I would end up with a headache and I'd be flat out on the bed. He just did what he did.
Did he tell you he was going to do that?
Oh yeah, I've seen him, somebody he didn't like, I've seen him get him off a ladder, you know, I've seen him heal a cat. I mean, there was a cat that was at death's door, he brought that back. Somebody with severe neuralgia, this woman who was probably in her 30s, late 30s, she came into the house crying in pain, and my father would heal hands on her, and it went. So the theme of psychic goings on, my mother has had a UFO incident in about 1999, where she opened the curtain windows to see one of them hovering, well, up in the air looking at her. Said that she awoke to see somebody also looking at her in her bedroom, like a tall fella, looking at her. I didn't believe in them. The situation with my father was he just didn't believe any of that at all. Never dabbled in any of that, but he was potently psychic. I'm Scottish on my mother's side, and we're Norman, and I think that there is another reason as well, because I've targeted the extent I've been is because I'm probably bloodline as well. I've reason to suspect that the targeting certain individuals who are targeted by the paranormal extreme levels, i.e. like myself, and I've had the UFOs coming over the house and all that kind of thing.
The word targeted, it comes up quite a bit.
You could call it energy, but it's intelligence.
This is quite a common theme. Do you think that this has come from a pre-life?
Yeah, it will happen. Now, people will say, well, I don't believe in reincarnation.
Well, it's interesting also because people from a very, very young age start having experiences. And I think, well, how does anybody know to target them in the first place?
You're dealing with something that's of a very advanced intelligence that we as human beings don't understand. Space-time continuum, it's a stream. Human beings are being tracked. And I would suggest that the part of the UFO situation is all about them observing history. So, well, we're meant to be Norman and Scottish on my mother's side.
French there.
French, Our original name is Boras, not Topping, as I understand. Strongly believe, due to the level of experiences and interactions that which includes the targeting, the UFOs over the house, all that kind of thing, that some of us are actually bloodline, and of rare bloodline of dynasty of some description. But it's also, and this is the crucial thing to remember, it's also about them observing us in history, and the choices we make now affect us, obviously, but also may affect them in some...
That's it, and I think that's a very interesting point.
Indeed.
And just to tie up the family aspect, have you got brothers and sisters?
I've got a sister. She has severe learning difficulties, but I'll never forget the day she came down the stairs and drew this picture. I said, what's that, Sarah? And she said, oh, that's Rollo in a UFO, and she'd drawn this UFO with somebody in it. I've reason to suspect that my sister may have had some type of interaction with them. I know I certainly have. And I'm sick and tired of these people who are meant to be well known in the UFO community, standing there at conferences and going, well, I went aboard the craft and the aliens came and hugged me and the aliens were very nice, and then Stryber with his, what do the visitors want? And all the data. And there's people sat there thinking, oh, that's all very nice, but it doesn't answer my questions. So I don't know it all, but what I'm talking about, because of the incidents that have happened to me have been pretty extreme due to me being potently psychic, or I don't come across, but I'm shattered with it.
Let's back up and let's go back to your early years.
Basically, I was 11 years of age, and I started dabbling in the occult at an early age, about 12 to 14 years of age.
What took you to that?
Well, I don't know, frankly, I don't. I think it was my father who was talking about his healing and all that kind. The gist of the matter was I went into that and I studied the occult. He didn't study the occult, but I did. I cast a love spell on this girl who I really liked, and it ended up with the opposite effect happening, and I didn't like turning up for a day.
Yeah, naughty man.
Naughty man,
you know it's that risk.
Yes, the occult is a path to nowhere. Intention is the power of the universe. It absolutely is. It's intense. Not the occult that drives things. Humanity in general, I don't think, realises that.
We haven't got a clue.
No, we haven't. We've been dumbed down. We've definitely been dumbed down. What is of concern, though, is for us as a race of people, as human beings, who are being visited by off-world visitors, who are having interaction with intelligences that are advanced, that are not even part of our time frame or are even from our future. Very important thing to know is that we have to realise that we are being A, dumbed down, but B, we have to realise that the forces around us that dumb us down, the ferocity of what they may do to us cannot be underestimated. So while they're all thinking about the Ashtar command and the latest thing from that, and it's all love, light and peace, I can guarantee you in real life with the UFO situation and the involvement of the intelligence around that, a very different story is painted that is not in the books. It's not in the UFO research books that you would see. Talks of us going down a line of time, which is what it's about, and a signal, and what it's all about is about a line of time from my point of view, and signal. And that signal, as it changes into a conscious reality, could manifest on us, and that is the special thing.
11 we were talking about was when you were beginning to get into the occult.
Of course, the occult opens doorways into the mind because you're dealing with energy, and we do not understand how our mind reacts to these dimensions and all that kind of thing. So I started having nightmares and having awful bad luck, which is what happened. The mind isn't firewalled correctly to this kind of thing. The mind does not have a firewall against this kind of thing. It became a bit of a nightmare for me, and at 16 I left school. I had a very, very difficult teenage time. I left school and I got a job. My school life was atrocious. I was severely bullied, and we're still at the primary school, and it meant there was a teacher at the Selby Abbey primary school that made my life a living hell. So it's been this horrendous pattern, constant abuse. It never stops. It never. Years of age, I managed to get a job, and I worked there, job at the local authority for a number of years, for about 12 years. I ended up going into severe depression. I set my heart on stage school, and I got into stage school. But I remember before going to ALRA to audition that I had my first real UFO incident, 91, and I'm just coming back from a rehearsal. And at the moment, no UFO stuff's happening. Nothing really kind of freaky is happening.
11 years old, till 21. You've been into the cult, finished with
Yeah,
it.
that's it. And nothing really much is going, but there's always this sense of being watched by something stand. And as a child, I'd stand there just looking at thin air thinking, what's that there? There's something in the air. There's something beyond that. I mean, at the age of 10, I was awoken in my bed with the sound of demonic laughter. And
again, in childhood, a lot of paranormal activity around
absolutely,
you?
Yeah. There was a lot of that going on, and I could not comprehend it. So in 91, when I'd come back from rehearsal, I'm walking into the house, and I looks up in the air, and there's this bloody thing over the roof, like something out of Close Encounters. All flashing lights. And I thought to myself, it was just like that, a split second, and I thought to myself, what the hell is that? Probably the size of a little smaller than a Boeing, but it was there and it was gone. About 1994, when things started really to go odd. And I remember I was working in an office, and they'd moved to Cheltenham, and so I moved to a place in Orpington in Kent. And it ended up with some very strange goings on where we'd have these strange balls of light at tremendous speed coming over the house, really high in the sky. These things were coming in at speed, and I'm thinking, what the hell's all that about? It was this feeling of, and I mean, they were following me everywhere, these bloody things, that they were capable of just stopping to a dead stop and then zipping off again, which is common. There was odd things going on with the dog.
Was there anything that started these?
Not that I'm aware of.
Right.
Oh, but there was. You see, what they're observing is history. So what I have not done and what I'm going to do, they've already seen. It's a tricky conundrum, but that's my take on it. They're observing history through time. It's not about me being the alien ambassador, or me being the chosen one, or me being taken aboard a craft and shown what it's all about. They're observing history. And some of them are geneticists. This went on for a number of weeks, once a week, something like that. And then the first real UFO thing happened when I was walking down Ladbroke Grove in Paddington, and down a place called Parade Street. And I looked up in the sky and I saw this kind of thing that was not an aircraft. This was like a car headlight in the sky that just suddenly opened up like that, closed off, and I thought it was going to crash into a block of flats. And I was holding my breath, thinking, oh my days, that's going to go into a block of flats. It didn't. It didn't do anything, it just vanished, momentary and sudden. Now, I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and then started having the very odd, strange dreams. It was all to do with interaction with the UFOs. Just strange visions of craft flying everywhere, pyramid vision. Yeah, quite common to be followed.
For no apparent reason?
For no apparent reason. Absolutely bananas. Yeah. I didn't understand any of it. I couldn't understand it at all.
Are there many of these things going overhead?
No, there'll only be one or two dogs going mad. And all of a sudden you hear this thing, this whatever, this no sound, nothing, no, other than
vibration?
No, nothing like that. You'll just hear a voice. So you're alerted by a voice that isn't internal, it's external. Yeah. So you've got a voice that says, "Why don't you tell that bloody dog to shut up?" I was shocked by that, and I'm thinking, poor dog was going nuts on the landing. It would stand on the landing when these things were coming over, and it would just bark its ruddy head off, and it would know. Cut a long story short, I left London, went back to Yorkshire, little knowing of the absolute traumatic, at times unethical, disgraceful, shocking, insightful, uplifting, perceptive, brave, knowledgeable events that would happen. Dr. Stephen Greer, as an example, will say that there's peaceful interstellar interaction going on with peaceful alien group and all that kind of thing. And I'd like to, from my experiences of nearly 30 years of dealing with this, I'd like to think that that was the case. But my experiences tell me otherwise, and it's a reality that cannot be brushed under the carpet. And so I returned back to Yorkshire in '96, and that's when all hell began to start. I'm stood outside in July 1996, and I'm stood outside the house. I'm looking up in the air, and all of a sudden these two balls of light just come in like this, and merge as one, and then there's this orange flash. Big orange flash, it woke my mother up. And then next minute I know something whizzes past me to the right. It said, I just heard this voice go, hello, like that, nothing more, hello. A few years ago I had an experience where they came in over the house, that I knew what they were, I knew who they were, and I knew that they were here, and all of a sudden you look up in the sky and just get this flash, and then the kind of like the presence the presence of them. The sky goes still, the air goes still, there's cars going past, people going by, but as far as you're concerned, it's all stillness. And you get them whizzing round, and they're using a technology that we have no idea really how to conceptualise. We don't, and we won't have in future history as well have really any idea about the technology. I think mankind will be struggling to understand their technology even in the years ahead. I think the thing flew past and said hello. That's it. And I mean, I've had incidents happen where I've had, it's nice to see you, we'll see you again. Off the wall things happen with these objects that have been coming in. That our reality as human beings has an impact on us now and into the future, and that is being observed by these advanced UFO intelligences and possibly intercepted and altered. In a way they're altering time, in a way they're altering events, and what we're seeing is perhaps interception points in our future looking back at us as human beings. These intelligences that are perhaps abducting people or giving contactees uncomfortable experiences may in fact be from an advanced point in our history but are still alien. Very freaky thing to get the mind around. There's a possibility that is what the root cause of the problem is. Some sort of event has happened in history further down our timeline. This is a future timeline. I do believe that those events are feeding back at us, pinging back at us at a rate of not a famous doctor called Dr. Carla Turner died mysteriously. So indicated that there's perhaps a biological adjustment going on within the human species to accept and deal with this reality as a matter of a development of our species, like we would learn to walk, run.
You think of people like Lloyd Pye's work on project.
Yeah.
His work on the human development says we are the only species with 4,000 and maybe more potential conditions, problems, aspects of our biology that shouldn't be like that. Most species would have maybe 100 or 200 potentialities, but we've got 4,000, which speaks of engineering.
Definitely, this is definitely correct, and the engineering is continuing, and the alarm bells aren't ringing now in our time in November 2011. They're ringing. The alarm bells are ringing back at us in probably 21, 24, 2030, all the way down the line. The alarm bells are ringing about what we're doing now. For example, Libya, the situation in Afghanistan, Iran, America becoming a warlike Roman Empire and neglecting its people to such an extent that they're homeless and starving. Prime Minister David Cameron, for example, our world leaders not realising the actions that they're doing and not having the balls to stand up against those darker forces that are manipulating our reality.
Well, maybe that's because they're part of it.
No, I don't think they are. I think a lot of them are aware. I know I appeared on the Kevin Smith show a few months back. He said to me that there was a number of people who were very well known, including members of the royal family, was quite aware of this manipulation. So the force that lurks behind us, the scenes that manipulates us as a race of human beings, is very present, very there, and elements of our government, elements of our military, especially the US government in the 1950s, were quite aware of. And so I wasn't aware of it. It began in 1999 for me, where I started having a real knocks on the door and the volume of these situations really escalating on me. And things were ramping up when I started getting phone calls. I mean, it was quite common for me to pick up the phone and somebody go, "Shut up!" Just like that down the phone, and the phone goes down. You couldn't ring back the number.
Onto that, so the phone calls, did they abate?
They were continuous. They were absolutely continuous.
And do they continue even now?
No, they don't. How did they know, for example, that I was having the UFOs over the house before I did? They definitely knew. And it was a covert agency or a covert intelligence apparatus within the state of Britain that was aware of the UFO situation. And I put my website up in 1999. I was surprised at getting the phone, but that's all because I put this site up on the internet. Somebody background in Northern Ireland in Army intelligence. It was quite surprising what they'd come out with, and they basically said, "Look, what the website you've got up is going to bring people out the woodwork. You're going to get noticed because something must have been in that website what I'd written." But crucially, what was up there was the UFOs that I'd filmed. And I classed them as my primary UFO incidents that happened in 1999. And it was as a result of those UFO incidents in 1999 where the same object had been following me and tracking me and God knows where else and watching me.
And was there communication with
There absolutely is communication. Right. There is to this day with it. Yes, indeed there is. 1950s and 60s and 70s, the CIA and the British and the Canadians, they developed MK Ultra. They developed technology that would assault the mind. MK Ultra, it was actually like an assassination program. And I always parallel myself with Jason Bourne. The Bourne trilogies, and the reason why is because he's a man, he's up against a situation he doesn't understand, but it's the mindset against him that is venomous. The third Bourne film where the poor journalist gets hit in Waterloo Station, and they have no scruples at all, those people who were targeting Bourne, no scruples whatsoever. Yeah, it's covert operations of mind control, and this is what I was getting hit with. It began in 1999 and it didn't bloody stop. I don't know if you can imagine being awoken at 3 in the morning by artificially delivered technology, but it's not a good thing. We're talking some type of deliverable radio technology that interfered with me in such a way that you'd hear sound effects, gunfire, screaming, especially at 3 in the morning when they'd hit pretty hard. You'll be getting a series of different sounds. You'll be getting a narrative, you'll be told not to do this, not to do that. So what they'd do is they'd be causing an Inception-style kind of event in your mind that would be telling you to, for example, go and throw yourself off the bridge, do us a favour, do this to yourself, do that to yourself, go here, go there. Then you'd couple with that would be the following. You know, the actual physical, overt, not covert, overt. What was odd about these people was they were overt in everything they did. They were coming after me at a rate, and it was all because I had these UFOs coming in, it's actually a UFO, not UFOs, but a particular one. And I realised that all the other associated bullshit that went with it on my YouTube site, I've got balls of light everywhere, I'm sick of filming them. But it can be boiled down to the single event that happened to me in 1999 where a UFO illuminated the television antenna, and they put it, the guy who was a former special effects director, he put it under analysis, and he definitely said it was a UFO. It could do manoeuvres that an aircraft couldn't. It illuminated a TV antenna. We're not alone. That's when the harassment really started, and I had helicopters filming me. I mean, I had an incident with a helicopter. It's absolutely unreal. I'm walking home, and all of a sudden, this is at the height of my harassment when I'm getting the phone calls in 1999, you're getting all the jip that goes with it. This bloody helicopter appears, and it was a Special Forces helicopter, S555. We consulted Jane's, I consulted Jane's Defence Weekly about that, and it was definitely, it's an AS555 helicopter.
Are them in the UK?
No, the RAF don't use them. Not in the RAF. The Brazilian, Canada, a few other countries in the US use them, and it was a sliding door variant, which is very unusual, with a winch and a telescope. It was a souped up heli. Targeting that happened was by human beings, but it was also by something far more sinister, as I discovered, that intention of human beings to alter consciousness, manipulate events is present. Yes, I have reason to believe that they're being biologically adjusted. And
do you feel you have?
Yeah, absolutely. I do believe we're evolving into something else. I strongly do believe, however, that we are being observed historic events. They're highly evolved, they're very intelligent. I don't understand them, they're beyond my comprehension. Yeah. I know that they have certainly studied the current affairs of this planet. They are certainly aware of the mindset that is there within us, that is kind of like psychotic within the humanity, psychopathic. At the moment, we have people who are indicating that UFOs are going to deliver us to a new age, and we're all going to be saved. You have the mindset of North Korea and China, a psychotic mindset buried deep there, sat there, developing. China, for example, as a power, is developing. These UFOs with these intelligent people in them, and are quite aware of these situations. They're very aware. Okay. Sirius B, for example, is one where they've indicated that they've come from, that they're from Andromeda. If you ever saw them, you get the fright of your bloody life. I know, because they're not, they simply don't look human, and yet they are. Look at the Russian cosmonauts when they went up into space, the height of the Politburo and the Cold War, they were having interactions with them out in space. And I mean, they were describing roughly like the ones I'd seen, where you've got the triangular faces, the pointed, the long blonde hair. You've got some of them who have got short, spiky, blonde hair, very unique. Look, you've got specifically some of them who are nearly 7 to 6 feet in height and physique and stature, and you'd really know about it if one of them was sat there in front of you. They're the ones who are geneticists, they're experts, they're the ones who are very intelligent, and they have identified themselves to me as being from another solar system, from another star system. And I find their elusiveness questionable, and I find their intentions untrustworthy. I don't like what I'm seeing there, but there again, they're very wise teachers. They appear to be very wise teachers, but I keep playing this up. I keep thinking, well, they're wise teachers, they're good people, but are they? Am I being conned? It's disgusting if I am, because I'd like to think that at some point 3 years down the line I could be sat here and yes this, yes that. I mean, wouldn't it be fascinating? I'm no scientist. Sit down with one of them and discuss their folklore. They have folklore, they have history, they have elders. I mean, I nearly died of fright a few years back where one of them was stood in the bloody room. It's something I don't talk about, but she was stood in the room like something out of a bloody Amazon movie, frankly. But
and was she fully material?
Oh yeah, she was fully there, 7 feet in height and there. And the interaction is continuing. Make no bones about it, she made that very clear, that it doesn't appear that way at the moment, but it is. They're watchful of world affairs. And this was leading up to something, because what had happened was I began filming them.
You just told us that he had a particular UFO. He's had various things happen, but this UFO is a particular one, and he understands that they're from Andromeda, perhaps, and Sirius B, and or both. But also that they had manifested physically, and there had been some interaction. So we're going to pick that up there.
The whole scenario is based on you holding a deck of cards that you don't know you've got, but they know you've got. You're a player. You're in the game, as one very fine a guy who was into remote influencing, remote viewing said, and I do agree with that guy called Gerald O'Donnell. Don't agree with all of his work, but when it comes to, in terms of what's termed remote influencing and remote viewing and all that kind of thing, what he studied, there's a lot to be learned from what these guys were studying in the 70s. And so, these things appear in the room. It's something I have to live with. It's not something that is normal by any sense of the word, normal. No, it's not a normal thing, but it's something I have to live with. Climatisation is present. The indication of a hybrid integration continuum is what they do. Them are geneticists. They like to experiment with genetics.
Do you think you've been involved in a genetic program?
Yeah, I do. Better not go down that avenue. Mainstream media, where they have these covert agencies following people, that is definitely what has happened to me.
So does that give you the impression that there is a collusion between our, say, an aspect
I
of
wouldn't say collusion, I would say confusion. I would say that among our governments on the UFO situation there is confusion, and, well, you know this, but for those who are new to the subject, do not let them kid you on that they're not interested in it. They are. They take a very keen interest in it, and anybody who's having any liaison with the UFO situation is closely monitored. Be on Facebook, on Twitter, being followed. The incidents I've had in the pubs on 2 occasions, way back this was, it's quite spooky to have somebody say something to you that only you know what they're talking about, and they know in the game of things, and they've mentioned it to you as you walk past them.
That's government?
No, I don't think it's government, no. Oddly enough, no. It's some kind of rogue element that is probably not government. Now, at first I thought it was government. At first I thought, but I've had to study it, and I've had to look at espionage, I've had to look at security issues, I've had to look at all these things. And it led me to conclude that no, it wasn't the governments that per se that would be doing that. But this is all about, I hasten to add, this is all noise. This is humanity is awakening, and it's all about our further integration with what's out there in the big world. And we have several, if not thousands, I don't know, but I think several possible futures that we're going to go down. And I think that part of the UFO interaction with some of us, not all of us, is about realising that we need to avert from a certain course, like a train going down a railway line, to change points. If we do not, well, there will be consequences. To give people a bearing. If they watch the film Inception, especially Inception, that gives people a very useful bearing as to what goes on, because what happened there is that they go into like a very deep dream state. What is quite interesting is within that dream state, the mind goes into some kind of other realm or other dimension. And it is quite probable, I'm making an educated guess from my experience, that the mind, other people's minds, as in not of this world and from dimensions, are also incepting into that environment. Yeah. So you have a crazy situation occurring where there's a scenario going on where time does not exist, and we will possibly know it in that realm. Therefore, it's quite probable to suggest that you have an element of time-travelling interaction, which brings us probably nicely round to Alec Newald.
We're just referencing Alec Newald, who's a New Zealander who had 10 days of missing time, driving along, and suddenly he's in a different dimension, and 10 days later he's written a book called Co-Evolution, and again Tony was talking about that, and he was talking in interviews, and the book is about the experience where these ETs or these others are in fact us from the future, or
an aspect of us, a possibility, an aspect.
They are reverse engineering the timeline, basically.
Correct. Yeah, you have a situation occur where you have an inception going on from ourselves in future human history. That's not written about in any UFO book.
No, Alec Newald also had intense harassment,
Yes,
intense
he did.
threats to
He
his
did.
family,
Chucked in
finances,
prison. Yeah.
prison, and all the rest of it. So he's now keeping a low profile.
He does.
So you have
Yes.
to ask, why? What is it that the governments, these are governments, what are they scared of?
Yeah.
What are they scared of us knowing, the species?
Yeah, and I think it's more about the fact that they don't understand rather than knowing. I think that's more of the point, that they don't understand. They're trying to piece it together. I mean,
but you have to wonder why they would threaten somebody who's had a legitimate experience.
Yeah, I think it's because they're uneducated. That those people that threaten, it's because they don't understand what they're dealing with. They're uneducated, and they think. Remember that America at the end of World War II was very paranoid. It had just come out of the Manhattan Project. It had fought Japan, and it had UFOs coming in over Los Angeles.
Yes.
It was absolutely, there was
Crazy.
an air war going on over the UFO air war of 1950 in America, where UFOs were being shot out the sky, and the Americans turned around to Churchill and said, "Oh, nothing going on, Mr. Churchill. It's all a big laugh. Don't worry about it." Meanwhile, there was dogfights going on with UFOs. Now, they strongly believed at the time, the US intelligence community in 1950, before the 1970s remote viewing program, they were looking at the psychic elements of UFOs, and they strongly believed, and I believe also, that portals ritual, sacrificial ritual, portals, the occult practices, when cranked up to a certain level of intention, all these magical ceremonies and intensity, reason to suspect that a portal opened, and they had reason to suspect that the United States was being attacked by these UFOs from the foundation of the kind of these occult portals opening. They were right on the money.
Yeah.
That is indeed,
And I also wonder, and it's not a new thought, whether the Philadelphia experiment, let's say it happened, that caused a rift.
They set up two covert agencies. They set up Majestic 12, and the Collins elite were the ones that were looking at UFOs from a demological angle. Really? The Catholic Church, which is the biggest intelligence organisation in the world, and still is probably to this day, has studied the difference between demons, angels, and aliens very closely. And there's a very good interview on Binall of America regarding a Catholic Monsignor who's an expert in demonology. Valducci, that's the one. Valducci. He was the guy who was looking at those issues, and the US government was looking at those issues as well, because their planes were getting shot out the sky, and all across the world, aircraft accidents were increasing in 1950. Planes were being shot out the sky.
Well, like again, Wilbert, the Canadian radio engineer, actually, Wilburt B. Smith, was talking about the disassociation of the fabric, the atoms and the structure of the plane coming into contact,
quite common,
and causing the
it looked like something out of a Roadrunner movie, where you had the cockpit and the pilot in midair, his airframe ripped to pieces by the UFO. The other thing that spooked them was the UFOs coming over their UHF frequencies and calling family members' names, and that actually caused a lot of Russian cosmonauts to crack up. A lot of them needed psychiatric help because they were subjected to something called space whispering. When they were up in space, they were being whispered to about their family members. They were instructed that they were too young to venture outside of Earth, get back down to Earth, that kind of thing. A lot of them needed psychiatric help because of that. So America was also putting up with the situation regarding the Nazis, regarding Antarctica, of which Britain was deeply involved in. Before America was hunting the Nazis in Antarctica, Britain was doing it under something called Operation Tamerlan, which was a specialist thing they were doing. They were hunting the Nazis and the UFOs in Antarctica because they knew they were there, and America followed suit. So you had this scenario of America and other nations dealing with a UFO situation that was, to their perception, would be extremely malevolent, little knowing that there are actually, in fact, there is transaction going on with more peaceful, albeit grey, in terms of the grey man. The aliens can be grey people. They can have as Philip Corso said, the US Army was aware of them, aware that they were abducting people, but they just sat back and observed. 1970, the KGB were looking at psychic warfare heavily, and they coined a phrase called the biophysical body, which is another definition for the soul. It was amplification of the biophysical. In some cases, what would happen is that the soul, or the vessel that is the soul, is taken across time and space, as I perceive, and across our human version of what the Egyptian was called the afterlife, into a dimensional world that is alien, and then pushed back through again and replaced. So you're back in this, you haven't got a clue what's happened to you, but you're carrying all the echoes and signatures. I strongly believe, through my experiences, that the kingdom of heaven, or what we talk of as the afterlife, this is what blew me away. This is something that I am kind of like got an educated guess on, that it is artificially created by a very advanced intelligence.
Which is what Alec Newald was
specifically
saying.
The afterlife for humanity, when we depart this soul, has been created for us, which I find incredible. The other thing that I find incredible is that some of these ETs who are hybrid, who are born in a test tube, I have to ask them, do they have a soul? Darker forces at work are quite intent on suppressing the human race, and are quite intent on leading them down a garden path that is very nasty if we don't heed the warning. I think that the presence of the UFOs over my home, in particular, were signalling a clear warning of where we are going in history. I definitely think that is why they're there.
We've discussed another point, that you had attacks by UFOs.
I've been attacked twice now, yeah, absolutely. So, I became dangerously obsessed with filming them, frankly. At one point, I was told, do not go out alone at night and film them on your own. Don't do that. But I didn't heed that warning, and I went out on this particular evening, and I, hear me, the camcorder wasn't working correctly, and I remember seeing this UFO turn up, this ball of light UFO, and I remember the thing, it must have been about 1,000 feet up, and it just hovered at a distance of about 500 yards looking at me. It's like gunfight at the OK Corral, like a football, and it's hovering. I'm thinking, I'm gonna cop it here. It's gonna zap. It's gonna do something, and it did. It assaulted me, and flew off.
What was the assault?
We won't go into that. You know, obviously humanity is behind the scenes ruled by something. There's something moving behind the scenes. And so I'm coming back from night shift, and all of a sudden this bloody thing appears from nowhere over the rooftops, nearly knocks me to the bloody ground, and it's like all your head's vibrating with it here. You know, your skull vibrates, thinking they push it a bit further, you're going to be a goner. But what I discovered after very close observation was that these balls of light were of a particular type of UFO, and every time they were turning up, they weren't turning up over my house to communicate the message. They were wanting to observe the UFOs. What you're looking at is something that's been around us for a very long time, and I observed that they were wanting to observe what I was filming as well. I saw a different type of UFO, like something out of The Abyss, for example. The film The Abyss, the Illuminous, chasing them off. You know, and I've seen that on a couple of occasions. So it's quite obvious that there's something going on behind the scenes in the affairs of human beings that we are not aware of.
Those attacks impact you?
Mentally, you're traumatised. You're suffering post-traumatic stress disorder. So it wouldn't be it wouldn't be on the day it happened. It would be a week later or 4 days later, where the full shock would hit you.
So like a delayed shock situation.
All the time. It always has been. Physically, you're also exhausted. It gets to the point, physically you're okay, but mentally you're shattered.
Right.
Revealing to me of the true colours of what's going on in our world, and the fact that, for example, on the world stage, we see crisis after crisis. The banking crisis, manufactured very well, you know, and you've got to hand it to them. And this is what seems to be the unveiling of the hidden agenda that is now not hidden, it's quite overt and in your face. If we do not heed the warning, world leaders, governments are not taking the hint from them at the moment.
You mentioned something about the Antichrist. Just before we carry on with your timeline, the chronology of that, let's just explore that the Antichrist concept for a minute that you think is coming in.
I sincerely think that if we continue as we are, if we continue to neglect each other in the way that we're doing, if we continue with the way that's the things that are happening at the moment, they invaded Libya, Afghanistan, Iran, Iraq, there's chaos everywhere, austerity measures being presented in the UK at the moment. The austerity measures are nothing to do with austerity at all, but are part of a precise hidden agenda against the people of this country and of other nations as well. And these conditions all create a manifestation in time further down a timeline that creates, if you could imagine, like a pulsing signal, like something out of the cosmos. There's a danger that could manifest into a full-blown reality and rise up. And if it does, you could have something on the scale of World War II occurring on this planet for the third time, which is something that I'm quite aware of. They would sooner bomb Iran and let people starve on the streets. There's money to bomb Libya. There's money to do all that kind of thing, but there's no money for our schools and there's no money for our education.
And yet most people have got the reading age of an 11-year-old.
Correct, indeed. An interesting thing that the aliens said to Alec Newald. They said, you're never in the place that you think that you are. And it's very interesting is that there was an incident that happened to me in the supermarket only last week, where I was walking in the supermarket and all of a sudden everybody's going about their business, and there was an old lady and she was going about her business as well. But a higher level of awareness was doing something different. And what you were doing is you hear beyond normal hearing. You hear what is imperceptible. And I heard this woman say what she said. It wasn't her, but it was her. But it was her, perhaps, in a next life. Because time is just unbelievable. It doesn't exist. What I'm saying is there's a possibility that although she was doing the shopping in Tesco's, she was also somewhere else, further down in time, signalling back, pinging all the way back. It was very relevant for me, yes. It was a cry for help. It's an echo through history.
See, harassment, is that ongoing?
It is ongoing, and I think that we need to look at oneself and ask where the doorways of the mind have opened to allow that to happen. This is where one needs to just reflect and find out what's gone on to cause these events. I may be way off piste with a lot what I say, but it's just based on solid experience. Some who are regarding InfoWars taking the mick out of UFO researchers. So I emailed and I said, look, I'm willing to come on and stand up to the metal as well. So he said, oh great, come on my show. He says 4th of November at 11 o'clock in the morning. I did a great interview, there was nothing wrong with it. It was interesting because I wasn't feeling myself that morning, thought it was great to be part of this. And then to my horror, they uploaded the clip. It was a photo of me at a party looking like this. It's my happy face. And they'd used that image and of that big smiley screaming like a lunatic look and uploaded it to their YouTube channel while I was interviewing it. And the comments on the clip was kind of like, Jesus, who's this guy? What the hell's this? Going, oh, he's interesting though. It was going up to about 10,000 hits. And I emailed Paul to say, look, Paul, I'm not impressed with this image. What we can do about it.
Where did they get the image from?
They got it from my Facebook page. But out of all the images, they choose to use the one that would draw ridicule and piss-taking. There was an intention there. Yeah. I emailed Paul Watson. He said, I don't know, mate, what's going on. I'll look into it, and said, they're going to re-edit it, don't worry. And it was then that I never heard anything from them at all. And Mr. Watson ignored my emails, because he wasn't man enough to address the issue, and neither was Alex Jones. And the issue was that I'd been censored by them. They took the clip off. They indicated that it was across all platforms, but it's not across all platforms, because the platforms, i.e. Blip TV and other channels that it went up on, all link to their YouTube channel. So if it's removed off the YouTube channel, none of the other internet channels can see it. I class this as censorship. It's all very well, Mr. Jones and Mr. Watson, sitting there in front of your big InfoWars desk, and Mr. Watson doing his nightly news reports about the tyranny, the oppression. But you come and have a go and think you're hard enough when it comes knocking on your door, when you're up against it, when you're face to face with what you're talking about, and I don't think any of you have experienced what that's really like. And it's a disservice to everyone, is that, who have stood up for this tyranny that is going on behind the scenes and have put their lives at risk, that you censor people. I think it's disgusting, and I don't know how many more people have been censored, but I think it's frankly disgusting that they stand there in their ivory tower and really have no clue what it's really disgraceful. We've had UFO researchers floating down rivers. We've had CIA directors who wanted to do disclosure floating down rivers in canoes. Dr. Stephen Greer's assistant dying of cancer, being targeted. Carla Turner, other researchers dying. It's not a bloody joke. That's what really got to me.
It's 2001.
Yeah, I mean, during the process of my experiences, I was subjected to advanced technology that would make you comply. There's a special word for this technology, but basically the technology is developed to make somebody who might be considered subversive compliant. I'm quite a patriot, actually. I love my country very much. I wouldn't class myself as subversive in any way, really. I'm a liberal anarchist, perhaps, but, you know, I love Britain. In January 2001, I was awoken to the most horrific attack, and it was unbelievable. And I have to say that I'm not sure who delivered it, but if you can imagine the shower scene in Psycho, somebody in your head doing that to you. If you can imagine the fact that they've triggered the technology in such a way so that you cannot wake up. It's an extreme form of lucid dreaming with all the sound effects, and it's not just lucid dreaming, it's like physical attacks within like an Inception landscape. It's horrific. I remember in January 2001 it was ferocious, and I didn't think I'd survive the night. Like a games program, we are in a location that is of esoteric significance. It was in a church where it happened. Needless to say, that is kind of like the artificial programming that presents that. Yeah, the construct, as it were. The scenario of that construct attacking. It's very sinister because part of you is manipulated in such a way that you're pleasantly relaxed but you're being attacked. And it's bizarre because the mind accepts it. And it's very frightening because the mind doesn't seem to comprehend what's going on.
So it's like a compartmentalisation.
It absolutely is.
At the same time.
Oh, it's sinister because both parts are aware at the same time and you're being attacked. You don't know why it's happening.
Did you see your attackers?
Oh, absolutely. No, you don't know why it's happening, but you know that it is happening. It's a lot for people to handle, so I think we'll leave it there. It was pretty nasty stuff going on.
So what do you think that was about?
I think we'll keep that off camera.
So the effect of that then probably be to make you more cautious.
They identified themselves as a kind of like the enforcers of the UFO silence, the enforcers of keeping it all on the lid.
Right.
They identified themselves as being an unelected police.
You're not the one hitting the deck all the time. Bloody hell, he's got up again. Oop, bloody hell.
Yes, they can't keep me down, love. They can't. Kinds of things. You've got to remember when you go into their dimension that they're forward in time from us. From where we are now, their lives, they as people, are forward in time from where we are now. Therefore, it stands to reason that you have effectively time travelled. Then you put back again. You have experienced without knowing it. You have probably gone through human history without even knowing it, not even aware. But it leaves an echo. It leaves a trace with you. You're like, I don't know, like a beacon.
So this is what Ammach is doing, helping you folks a platform to the world in a sympathetic way.
I certainly have grown in many ways. In closing, you think if somebody could lift humanity's consciousness, the consequences of that are en masse to strive for.
I think it's been an absolutely fascinating discussion. And really, thanks very much for sharing. Is there anything you want to say in just closing?
Just look at research. Thank you for having me anyway.
I have to thank Tony. I think he shared some really important insights. There's a lot to take in. But you know, this path isn't easy and the information isn't necessarily easy to assimilate, but it is thought-provoking. And I just think that we all need to keep our minds open, and like the parachute, works best when it's open. Thank you. See you at another interview.